This was the woman he once called a burden. The same woman he said would never belong in his world. The same woman he invited to his wedding just to watch him replace her. But when she arrived, she did not come alone. 2 bodyguards opened the door. The hotel manager rushed forward, and in front of everyone he had gathered to shame her, the truth stepped into the room before she even said a word. Kwame Mensah had always loved being admired, even before the money, even before the tailored suits, the private jets, the magazine covers, and the carefully photographed life that made strangers on the internet think he was self-made, untouchable, and born to dominate every room he entered. He loved the way people looked at him when he walked in. The respect, the envy, the hunger. By the time he turned 38, he had built a real estate empire stretching across 3 countries, bought a penthouse overlooking the Atlanta skyline, and surrounded himself with the type of people who treated compassion like weakness and humility like a disease poor people invented to feel better. That Friday night, he sat in a private pre-wedding lounge inside the Aurelia Grand Hotel, one leg crossed over the other, a crystal glass balanced between his fingers, while laughter rolled around the table like smoke. His fiancée, Vanessa Cole, was leaning into him, smiling the kind of smile that always looked expensive and slightly cruel. Her diamond bracelet flashed every time she moved her hand. Around them sat investors, socialites, influencers, and a senator's son who had failed in business 3 times but still talked as if success had personally chosen him. Kwame lifted the ivory invitation card between 2 fingers and smirked. "I sent one to Amina," he said. The table went quiet for half a second. Then the laughter started. Vanessa turned toward him, eyes widening in pleased disbelief. "Your ex-wife?" Kwame nodded. "You actually invited her?" one of the men asked. "Of course I did," Kwame replied. "If someone spent years watching me struggle, it's only fair she watches me win." More laughter. Vanessa shook her head, half impressed, half entertained. "That is wicked." Kwame smiled without shame. "She'll come." "You sound very sure," Vanessa said. "I am sure," he answered. "Women like Amina always come when they think there's still a piece of the past left to collect." One of the women at the table laughed into her glass. "What are you expecting? Tears?" Kwame's smile sharpened. "Not tears. Perspective." Vanessa rested a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe we should give her a little job while she's here. Let her see what service looks like from the right side of the room."
Someone at the table snapped their fingers in approval.
Kwame chuckled. "Maybe we should."
What none of them noticed was the wedding operations director standing near the doorway, holding a tablet against her chest, her expression carefully blank. She kept her eyes lowered. Because unlike the people in that room, she knew exactly who Amina Okoye was now. And she knew something else too. The Aurelia Grand had changed controlling ownership 10 days earlier. Quietly, legally, completely. The acquisition was made through a private holding company, one with almost no public face and no interest in publicity. But the final authorizing signature on the transfer documents belonged to one woman, Amina Okoye. The same woman Kwame was mocking. The same woman he believed had been left behind. The same woman he had just invited into a building she now controlled. 3 years earlier, Amina sat at the edge of a narrow kitchen table in a 1-bedroom apartment, staring at a laptop screen so long her eyes burned. The apartment had once felt temporary, a stepping stone, a sacrifice that would one day become part of a beautiful story they would tell at anniversary dinners. The kind of story successful couples told after the struggle was over. How they had started with almost nothing. How they had believed in each other. How love had made the hard years meaningful. But that night, love felt less like a promise and more like a bill she had been paying alone. It conversed about midnight. Kwame still was not home. Her tea had gone cold. A candle near the window had burned halfway down, and on her screen was a social media post from a luxury rooftop event downtown. In the center of the photograph stood Kwame, smiling into the camera with Vanessa beside him, her hand pressed against his chest like it had already learned where it belonged. Amina looked at the picture without blinking. She did not cry, not adding. The strange thing about heartbreak is that sometimes it enters the room long before the tears do. It settles first in the body, in the jaw, in the throat, in the chest, in the exhausted part of the soul that suddenly realizes it has been carrying something heavier than love. When the front door finally opened at 1:17 a.m., Kwame came in, laughing at something on his phone. He satisfied when he saw her awake. "You're still up?" Amina Canada closed the laptop slowly. "I was waiting." "For what?" She looked at him for a long moment. "The truth." He exhaled sharply, already annoyed. "Amina, not tonight." "That woman has been on your arm every week for 2 months."
She's a business contact. Amina held his gaze. "And I'm a fool?" Kwame tossed his keys onto the counter. "I'm tired. So am I." He turned to face her fully then, irritation rising. "Do you know what's exhausting? Building a life while you question everything I do." Amina stared at him in disbelief. "Building a life?" she repeated softly. "You mean the life I helped you build?" That sentence hung in the room like truth always does when no one wants it spoken. 10 years before that night, Kwame had nothing but ambition and charm. He rented a room from a cousin. He owned 2 decent shirts, 1 pair of shoes good enough for meetings, and a notebook filled with plans too large for his bank account. Amina met him when he was still introducing himself with confidence he had not yet earned. He spoke like a man standing at the door of greatness, and maybe that was what drew her in. Not arrogance, belief. There is something deeply powerful about believing in a person before the world gives you a reason to. Amina believed. She believed when his proposals were rejected. She believed when investors ignored him. She believed when his car broke down and he pretended it was not humiliating to arrive late to meetings because he had taken 3 buses and walked 12 blocks in borrowed shoes. She worked double shifts. She sold the gold bracelet her mother left her. She covered rent when he could not. She cooked, planned, edited his presentations, proofread his emails, and stayed awake beside him when the fear of failure made him silent. One rainy night, after another investor said no, Kwame sat on the floor with his back against the sofa and whispered, "Maybe I'm not built for this." Amina sat beside him and placed an envelope in his lap. He looked down. "What's this?" "My savings." His face changed instantly. "No." "Yes." "Amina, absolutely not." She smiled, tired but sincere. "If I don't invest in the person I believe in most, then what exactly am I saving for?" His eyes filled that night. He held her like the world had finally given him one good thing he did not deserve to lose. He promised her then that when he rose, she would rise with him. And for a while, it seemed true.
His first major deal changed everything. Then another. Then a bigger one. Success arrived fast and dressed itself as proof that he had always been special. The apartment became a condo. The condo became a townhouse. The townhouse became a penthouse. And somewhere in that climb, the man who once kissed her hands and called her his piece began introducing her less often. At first, it was subtle. He would correct the way she spoke at dinners,
Suggest different hairstyles. Recommend more refined dresses. Tell her certain rooms required a different kind of polish. He said it like advice, like love, like improvement. But criticism spoken softly still cuts. Eventually, his new friends made less effort to hide what they thought. They talked around her. They studied her dark skin, her natural hair, her quiet confidence, and treated all three as evidence she was unfinished. Amina noticed something worse than their contempt. Kwame had begun to crave it. Not their contempt exactly, their acceptance. And weak men become dangerous when approval matters more to them than loyalty. The night everything broke, Kwame hosted a celebration for closing his biggest commercial acquisition yet. The ballroom shimmered with money, cameras flashed, champagne moved like water. Amina had spent 3 weeks helping coordinate the event from behind the scenes because he said he trusted her taste. For the first half hour, he barely left her side. Then Vanessa arrived. Tall, poised, camera ready. One of those women who entered rooms as if they had been lit specifically for her. The temperature changed immediately. People noticed her. Then they noticed him noticing her. Amina felt it before she understood it. Later, she found them together near the private terrace, laughing too closely over a joke that stopped the moment she approached. "Can we talk?" Amina asked. Kwame rubbed his jaw. "Now?" "Yes, now." Vanessa crossed her arms and looked away with theatrical boredom. Amina ignored her. "I'm asking you one time to tell me the truth." Kwame's expression hardened, not from guilt, but from irritation that she had forced the moment into the open. "Why do you always do this?" he asked. "Do what?" "Bring your insecurity into every room." The words landed harder than a slap. Amina's face went still. Vanessa gave a small, satisfied smile. Amina looked at Kwame, waiting for him to take it back. He didn't. Instead, he sighed and said the sentence that ended their marriage long before the paperwork ever did. "Maybe the problem is that you no longer fit the life I'm building." Amina did not scream. That is what people always imagine strong women doing when they are betrayed. They expect broken dishes, raised voices, public scenes, something dramatic enough to entertain the guilty. But pain can become very quiet when it is final. A week later, Amina packed 2 suitcases, left her wedding ring inside a ceramic bowl on the kitchen counter, and walked away without asking for anything except her dignity. Kwame did not chase her. At first, he assumed she would call. Then he assumed she would regret leaving. Then he convinced himself she had needed him more than he had ever needed her. He moved on quickly, because moving on publicly is one of the easiest ways for prideful people to hide what they do not want to examine. What he did not know was that Amina was not collapsing. She was rebuilding. Not loudly, not for an audience, not with revenge as the center of her motivation. That was the part people always misunderstand about women who rise after being underestimated. The rise is rarely about the man. It is about survival becoming strategy. The first year after the divorce was ugly. Not glamorous ugly, not cinematic ugly. Just ordinary, brutal, exhausting ugly. She downsized, took consulting work, slept too little, worked through migraines, sat in parking lots crying before meetings, then went inside and performed competence so well that no one guessed her heart had recently been torn apart by the very future she helped fund. But she was smart. Smarter than Kwame had ever needed her to appear. Long before his first million, she had quietly learned the mechanics of contracts, acquisitions, zoning issues, financing structures, and hospitality development, because she had spent years helping him prepare for rooms he later tried to keep her out of. She saw patterns other people missed. She understood people. She knew where overconfident men borrowed too much and where underpriced properties held hidden value. By the second year, she had partnered with a small private investment group led by two Nigerian sisters who respected calm intelligence more than loud charisma. Together, they bought struggling boutique properties, restored them, repositioned them, and sold two at a profit no one had predicted. By the third year, Amina was no longer surviving. She was directing. Her company, Obsidian House Capital, had become known in very specific circles for doing something rare. Entering distressed luxury spaces, quietly restructuring them, and walking away with long-term value while noisier competitors fought for headlines. She did not chase cameras. She did not post motivational quotes. She did not need strangers to watch her becoming powerful in order for the power to be real. So when the acquisition opportunity for the Aurelia Grand came across her desk, she studied it with no emotion at first. A legacy property, excellent location, poor internal management, strong event revenue, weak debt positioning, and one major wedding booking scheduled under the previous ownership contract. Client name? Kwame Mensah. She stared at the file a little longer than necessary. Her executive assistant Zuri noticed the silence. "Do you want me to reassign this?" Amina closed the folder. "No." "Are you sure?" Amina stood and walked to the window. Below her, the city glowed with the kind of confidence only cities have, as if even destruction can be turned into architecture if given enough time. "Yes," she said finally. "Proceed." 10 days later, the deal closed. 7 days later, the invitation arrived. It came in a gold-lined envelope, heavy and smug in the way only expensive wedding invitations can be. Her name was written in elegant script across the front, as if beauty could disguise insult. Zuri set it on the desk carefully. Amina looked at it for several seconds before opening it. "Kwame Mensah and Vanessa Cole request the honor of your presence." Her expression did not change. No trembling hands, no tears, no bitterness breaking through the skin, just stillness. Zuri waited. "Would you like me to decline?" Amina read the card once more, then set it down. "No," she said. "You're going?" Amina met her assistant's eyes. "Yes." Zuri hesitated. "Because of the hotel?" Amina's voice remained calm. "No. Because men like Kwame confuse silence with weakness. I think clarity will be useful." The day of the rehearsal dinner arrived wrapped in polished luxury. The Aurelia Grand looked immaculate. Floral installations lined the entrance. Valets moved in perfect rhythm. Staff communicated through discreet earpieces. Chandeliers burned above the grand staircase like captured constellations. Kwame walked through the ballroom wearing a tailored white dinner jacket, and the satisfaction of a man who believed the universe had finally agreed with his opinion of himself. Vanessa hovered beside him, filming short videos for social media while offering small criticisms about centerpieces, lighting, and guest placement. Every complaint sounded less like stress and more like entitlement in a bridal tone. Kwame barely noticed the subtle shifts around him. Staff listened to him politely, but checked their instructions elsewhere. Managers nodded at his requests, but did not prioritize them unless they aligned with executive approval. The power in the building had already moved. He just had not yet realized he was performing control inside someone else's structure. Upstairs, in a private executive suite overlooking the courtyard, Amina fastened one gold earring and studied her reflection. She wore a sleek black gown, elegant but restrained. Not flashy, not thirsty for attention. Her beauty did not shout. It settled into the room with authority. Her hair was sculpted back neatly. Her makeup was soft, expensive, and precise. On the table behind her lay final event approvals, revised staff directives, security coordination notes, and an operations memo carrying her signature. Zuri entered. "Motorcade is ready." Amina nodded. "And security?" "In place." Amina picked up her clutch. "Good." When her car pulled up beneath the front canopy, two security officers stepped out first. Both women, both immaculate, both alert without being theatrical. The lobby staff straightened almost instantly. Then Amina emerged. There are entrances people make because they want to be seen. And then there are entrances that force truth into the room simply by existing. This was the second kind. The hotel manager hurried forward. "Good evening, Ms. Okoye." Amina gave a small nod. "Good evening, Daniel. Is everything prepared?" "Yes, ma'am." "Any issues?" "None that require your concern." She adjusted one cuff lightly. "If that changes, tell me before it becomes visible." "Of course." Together they walked toward the private hall where the rehearsal dinner was already underway. Inside, laughter floated across the room. Glasses touched. Vanessa was finishing a story no one would remember in 2 days. Kwame stood with a small circle of men near the center of the room, smiling as if admiration was his natural climate. Then the doors opened. The change was immediate, though not loud. A few guests turned first, then a few more. Conversations thinned. The room did not know yet why it was reacting, only that something more important than its own performance had entered. Kwame looked up casually, then froze. For one strange second, his face lost all rehearsed expression. Because the woman entering the room was not the woman he had invited in his imagination. Amina did not look wounded. She did not look eager. She did not look like a memory asking permission to stand in the present. She looked complete. Vanessa followed his stare. "Who is that?" Kwame swallowed once before answering. "Amina." Her eyebrows rose. "That's your ex-wife?" Amina walked forward with calm, measured steps, security a respectful distance behind her, not clinging, not hovering, just present enough to make a statement no one needed translated. Kwame stepped toward her. "Amina." She stopped. "Good evening, Kwame," she said. No shakiness, no softness, no visible pain. Just composure so complete it unsettled him instantly. Vanessa moved closer, her smile thin and glittering. "Well, you actually came." Amina turned her gaze toward her briefly. "I was invited." Vanessa laughed under her breath. I suppose curiosity is hard to resist when your replacement is wearing white. A few people nearby smiled too quickly, eager to attach themselves to cruelty before they even knew whether it was safe. Amina looked at Vanessa without blinking. Anyone can wear white, she said softly. It takes more to wear peace. Vanessa's expression tightened. Kwame cleared his throat. You look different. Amina returned her gaze to him. Time tends to do that. He tried to smile, but something about her steadiness made charm feel inappropriate. I didn't expect security. Amina glanced toward the two women by the door. I've learned that not every invitation comes with good intentions. That line landed. Several people looked away. Vanessa folded her arms. You think too highly of yourself. This is a wedding, not a state function. Amina's tone never changed. Then perhaps everyone here should behave accordingly. The silence after that was brief but noticeable. Kwame forced a laugh. Still sharp. Amina said nothing. That was what disturbed him most. If she had come angry, he could have managed anger. If she had come fragile, he could have enjoyed fragility. But calm leaves manipulative people with nowhere to place their performance. Kwame gestured toward the room. Well, make yourself comfortable. We're all family here. Amina's eyes moved slowly across the ballroom, over the floral columns, the suspended lights, the gold-accented table settings, the staff patterning service along the outer lanes. It's a beautiful layout, she said. The West Side service corridor still bottlenecks under pressure, but the adjustment helped. Kwame frowned. What adjustment? Before she could answer, one of the banquet captains approached and lowered his head slightly. Ms. Okoye, the revised timing for Table 7 has been confirmed. Amina nodded. Good. Kwame looked from the captain to Amina. Why is he reporting to you? The captain hesitated. Amina answered first. Because that is currently the appropriate line of communication. Kwame's face hardened. This is my wedding weekend. Amina met his eyes. Is it? Vanessa stepped forward, offended by a sentence she did not fully understand. Excuse me? Amina looked at her with almost clinical calm. I said, is it? Kwame lowered his voice. What exactly are you trying to do? Amina's expression remained unreadable. Attend? He moved closer. No, don't play games with me. She tilted her head slightly. Kwame, I didn't come here to play anything. For a moment they stood in a silence so taut it made nearby guests stop pretending not to listen. Then the hotel manager approached. Ms. Okoye, he said carefully, the ownership file you requested is ready for signature if you would still like to review it tonight. The sentence hit the room before anyone processed it. Kwame blinked. Ownership file? Daniel, the manager, instantly looked uncomfortable. Amina did not turn toward him. Later, she said. Thank you. Kwame's voice sharpened. What ownership file? No one spoke. Vanessa laughed too quickly. This is absurd. Kwame looked directly at the manager now. I asked you a question. Daniel swallowed. Sir, perhaps this is not the best time. Answer me. Amina exhaled softly, not from fear, but from mild disappointment that the moment had become uglier than necessary. Still, truth has its own timing. She turned to face Kwame fully. The Aurelia Grand changed controlling ownership, she said. 10 days ago. He stared at her. What does that have to do with you? A pause. Then, very simply, she answered, I approved it. The room seemed to narrow. Kwame's expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. Approved what? The acquisition. He gave a short, disbelieving laugh. You? Yes, Vanessa scoffed. Please. Amina did not raise her voice. If you need confirmation, ask your hotel manager who signs his executive directives now. All eyes turned toward Daniel. He looked trapped for one miserable second, then straightened himself with the dignity of a man who knew facts were safer than loyalty to someone else's ego. Ms. Okoye is the principal executive authority representing the current controlling ownership structure of this property, he said. No music stopped. No glass shattered. Nothing dramatic announced the moment. And somehow, that made it worse. Because the truth did not need spectacle. It simply rearranged the room. Kwame stared at Amina as if language had failed him. That's impossible. Amina held his gaze. No, it's documented. Vanessa's face had begun to lose color beneath the makeup. You're saying she owns this hotel? Amina answered with precision. I'm saying I control this venue, this weekend's operations, and every executive decision connected to this property until further notice. Nobody laughed now. The people who had mocked her minutes earlier suddenly became deeply interested in their glasses. Kwame's jaw clenched. You planned this. Amina's expression softened almost imperceptibly, not in kindness, but in pity for how predictable he still was. No, she said. You invited this. That line cut deeper than anger could have. He stepped even closer, voice low. You think this makes us even? Amina looked at him for a long second. Then she asked the one question prideful men hate most, because it removes them from the center of the story. Even? She repeated softly. Kwame, why would my life still be measuring itself against yours? He had no answer ready, because the people who enjoy humiliating others always assume they remain important long after they have been outgrown. Vanessa tried one last time to recover the room. This is all very dramatic, but a hotel title doesn't change history. Amina turned toward her. You're right, she said. It doesn't. Vanessa looked relieved too soon. Amina continued. History changed the day I learned that being loyal to someone without character is just another form of self-abandonment. No one moved. No one even pretended to interrupt. Kwame's face had gone tight with something more dangerous than embarrassment. Recognition. Not of her wealth, not of her power, of his miscalculation. He had expected a wounded woman. What stood before him was a woman he no longer had emotional access to. And there is no punishment more disorienting to the arrogant than discovering they can no longer reach the person they once controlled. Amina glanced once around the ballroom, then toward Daniel. Has service timing been corrected for the rehearsal toasts? Yes, ma'am. Good. And the front corridor? Cleared. She nodded. Excellent. Kwame looked almost offended by her ability to move on inside the same moment that was destroying his composure. You're just going to stand here and act like none of this matters? Amina turned back to him. No, she said calmly. I'm going to stand here knowing it no longer hurts. That sentence did what wealth could not. It stripped him. Not publicly in the obvious sense, but inwardly, completely. For the first time that evening, his confidence looked expensive and empty at the same time. He searched her face for some remnant of the woman who once pleaded for honesty on a rainy night in a kitchen where their future was still alive. He found nothing he could use. No ache, no longing, no unfinished business. Only closure so complete it made him irrelevant. Vanessa touched his arm. Kwame, say something. He didn't. Because what could he say? That the woman he had called unfit now held more authority in the room than he did? That the venue he had chosen to display his status was quietly under the control of the very person he hoped to demean? That while he had spent 3 years performing success, she had spent the same years becoming the kind of power that does not need applause. Amina checked the time on her watch. Then she looked at Kwame one final time.
You invited me here to witness your happiness, she said. So let me offer you something useful in return. He swallowed. She continued. Real happiness is impossible when your self-worth depends on being above someone you already betrayed. The line was not cruel. That was what made it devastating. Cruelty gives people something to resist. Truth simply enters and stays. Vanessa's lips parted, but no sound came. Amina stepped back slightly. I'm not here to ruin your wedding, she said. The event will proceed exactly as scheduled. Your guests will be treated well. The staff will remain professional. Nothing will be taken from you tonight. Kwame stared at her. Then why come? Amina's answer came without hesitation. So the last image you ever keep of me is not the woman you discarded. Silence. Pure and total. Then she added, softer now, but somehow even stronger. It is the woman who survived you, outgrew you, and never needed your permission to rise. She turned. No dramatic flourish. No waiting for applause. No backward glance. Her security detail fell into step as she moved toward the exit, Daniel and 2 senior staff members adjusting instinctively to her pace. Halfway to the door, she stopped and looked over her shoulder just once. Daniel, she said. Yes, ma'am? Make sure the bridal suite flowers are refreshed before 7 a.m. White roses fade quickly under that lighting. Yes, ma'am. Also, move the receiving line 2 feet north. The photography angle is weak. Understood. Good. Then she left. And somehow, that final instruction broke the illusion more completely than the ownership reveal had. Because it proved this was real enough to be mundane for her. Kwame remained standing in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by people who had admired him an hour earlier and were now pretending not to study the wreckage in his face. Vanessa slowly removed her hand from his arm. What just happened? She asked. But she asked it quietly, because on some level, she already knew. Power had entered the room. Not the loud kind, not the desperate kind, the real kind. The kind built in silence while other people were busy underestimating it. The rehearsal dinner resumed eventually. Music returned, voices rose, waiters moved, champagne continued flowing. But no one in that room experienced the evening the same way again. Because once people witness dignity defeat humiliation without shouting, something in them is forced to reconsider what strength actually looks like. Kwame tried to recover. He made a toast later, though his hands were less steady than before. He smiled for photographs, but the smile no longer reached his eyes. He laughed when appropriate, but too late each time. And every reflective surface in the ballroom seemed to return the same truth to him from a different angle. He had not invited a broken woman to watch him win. He had invited a healed woman to witness how small he still was. Upstairs, in the executive suite, Amina stood by the window after changing out of her heels. The city spread beneath her in gold and midnight blue. Zuri entered quietly. Do you regret going? Amina did not answer immediately. Then she smiled, not with triumph, but with peace. No, she said. I regret that I once needed him to see my value. Zuri nodded. And now? Amina looked out at the skyline. Now I see it myself. That was the end of the story between her and Kwame. Not because he stopped existing,
not because he stopped being wealthy, not because life punished him with public collapse. Sometimes the deepest consequence is simpler than that. Sometimes the consequence is that the person you wounded goes on to become extraordinary without you, and you are left standing in the shadow of what your arrogance failed to recognize when it still had the chance. The wedding happened the next day. The flowers were refreshed. The lights were corrected. The receiving line was moved. The guests were impressed. The photos came out beautifully. And somewhere in every perfect image from that expensive celebration was a truth no filter could erase. The most powerful person connected to that event was never the groom. It was the woman he once thought he had left beneath him. The woman who arrived with bodyguards, commanded the building without raising her voice, and walked away with something greater than revenge. Proof. Proof that betrayal does not get the final word when discipline answers pain. Proof that class can silence cruelty more effectively than rage ever will. Proof that a woman can be broken by love, rebuilt by purpose, and return to the world so transformed that the people who once mocked her no longer recognize where they stand in relation to her. And if Kwame Mensah learned anything that weekend, it was this: never invite a woman to your downfall when you think you are inviting her to your wedding.